On this mission, we will learn how to perform a visual landing at an airbase, flying the AJS37 Viggen. Choose between a heavy or a light aircraft. Select an overhead pass or a direct approach to the airbase. The direct approach can employ a normal or a short approach. Optionally, you can practice the aircraft shutdown procedure. As a way of rating the final landing, a script by Tautenglis establishes the landing distance achieved, the shorter the better. This mission is based on the procedures described on the DCS AJS37 Flight Manual version 2.1. This training series is set on the Nevada map, and the approximate mission time is 20 to 25 minutes. By default, the pilot's body is shown. You can use left shift plus P to hide it if you prefer. When a voiceover tells you to interact with a cockpit element, wait until the voiceover has finished, before performing the interaction. If you are repeating the mission, note that most voiceovers can be skipped just by pressing the spacebar. Press spacebar to begin. You have selected a lightly loaded Viggen, where the main ordnance has been delivered and most of the fuel consumed. Your current weight is around 12.5 tons, which allows the use of the 15.5 degrees angle of attack option of the autothrottle system, AFK. Press spacebar to continue with the training. We have kept the mission paused, in order to have time to explain the diverse landing approaches available to the Viggen pilot. In essence, you can choose between two options, a direct approach or an overhead pass approach. A direct approach is one that flies towards the extended runway centerline without overflying the airbase. Normally, this kind of approach is done via a special landing waypoint, LB, at 20 kilometers from the runway. Alternatively, it can also be done via a so-called short approach, where the aircraft lines up on the runway closer to the touchdown point, at the landing waypoint LF, at 10 kilometers. During an overhead pass, the pilot overflies the runway in mode nav, before switching to mode landing nav, which then will guide him towards the extended runway centerline. An overhead pass can also be performed via the landing waypoint LB, at 20 kilometers, or via a short approach to LF, at 10 kilometers. Press spacebar to continue. Basically, you need three things to perform a successful visual landing at an airbase. Of course, number one is having onto the Viggen computer an L1 and/or L2 waypoint for a destination airbase. You can add such a waypoint while in the cockpit, but for this training we already have a L1 waypoint on our flight plan, the Tonopah Test Range Airbase. 2. A runway heading, which defines the direction we will use to perform the approach. We need to contact ATC in order to know which runway has been assigned to us. 3. The QFE value for the landing airbase, as it will impact the altimeter readings when over 600 meters AGL. You can find the QFE value on the first page of the kneeboard. Press spacebar to continue. We will contact Tonopah's air traffic controller to report we are inbound, but first we need to tune its frequency preset. For Tonopah test range it is preset 17, as shown on the kneeboard. Turn the highlighted knob until its nearby display reads 17. Note that every sixth knob position, the displays reads all M, which just means that the channel selector buttons corresponds to the G, F, and E channels of the FR24 radio. Good, now press the key or button that you have binded to the FR22 push to talk. The DCS communications menu should appear. Select F5, ATC. F1, Tonopah test range. F1, inbound.
Springfield,
Press spacebar once
inbound.
ATC answers. ATC will respond, telling you what heading and distance you should fly to reach its landing point, the current QFE at the airbase, and the runway assigned. It should be runway 14, take note of this information. Press F12 to clear the menu, and then spacebar to continue the training. The approach towards an airbase begins when a landing waypoint, either L1 or L2, becomes the next active waypoint when in master mode nav. Prior to starting the approach, we will make sure that our landing airbase is properly set up on our aircraft's computer. First, make sure you are in master mode nav, and the radar is active and on mode A1, PPI, for plan position indicator. Second, confirm that the computer data selector is at ACT-POS. Third, press LMAL to select the landing waypoint L1, which is the primary landing airbase. The destination indicator should display L1, and on the radar screen the waypoint circle now has a line segment over it. This segment represents the extended runway center line and its length corresponds to 20 kilometers. Press spacebar to continue. We need to set the direction from which to approach the runway. First, set the data selector knob to bonagrands to check which runway heading the computer will use. The computer display shows that it is using a heading of 337 degrees, which is the wrong end of the runway. Press LMAL again to have the computer select the reciprocal heading. Good, the display now shows the computer will use a 157 degrees heading, which corresponds to the runway 14. Note that the destination indicator has a flashing L. This is normal and is to remind the pilot that it is using the alternate runway heading. Return the data selector knob to ACPAS to continue the training. Open the kneeboard by pressing right Shift plus K to check which is the QFE at the destination airbase. Good, you can see the QFE at Tonopah test range is 823. Next, set both barometric altimeters to that QFE value. Close the kneeboard by pressing right Shift plus K again. Press spacebar once both altimeters are set. Set the HUD to its landing position, down. Set the SLAV SI switch to TIL, on. This will activate a decluttered HUD mode, once your altitude is below 100 meters AGL. Set the altitude source selector, HOD CISI, to RHM. This will ensure the radar altimeter is used as the primary altitude source, as it has a more accurate altitude reading below 600 meters. You have now the aircraft ready for a landing approach, and we have unpaused the simulation. It is time to choose which type of approach you want to practice. Press spacebar to continue the training using a direct approach, or press backspace to train with an overhead pass approach. You selected to train using an overhead pass landing approach. Just keep flying towards L1 until you pass overhead its runway. At that moment, you will select Master Mode Landing Nav, which will command you to turn left onto an airfield circuit for a landing approach. You can fly at high speed until you reach L1. At that point you will reduce speed to 550 km per hour for the landing circuit. Descend to 500 meters above ground prior to reaching L1, as this will allow the turn-nav system to fix any drift that we may have accumulated on our navigation system. The airbase should be visible up front. Apply a bit of zoom if needed. Maintain the current heading. If contacted by Tonopah's ATC, press the PTT and answer with F1, request landing.
1-1. Request landing.
You have just overflown the runway at L1, select Master Mode Land Ning Nav, to initiate an airfield circuit. Do it now. The destination indicator will now show LB1 as our next waypoint. Turn the aircraft sharply to the left, as commanded by the yellow vertical needle on the ADI, and the heading dot on the HUD. Maintain 500 meters altitude and reduce speed to 550 kilometers per hour, open the speed brakes if needed. At this point, you can select amongst two variants of this approach. Press spacebar to continue with the landing, using a normal overhead approach through waypoint LB1, or press backspace to employ instead a short overhead approach, directly to waypoint LF1. You have chosen to keep on a normal overhead approach, which is what you selected previously, by turning the master mode knob to its land Ning Nav position. The destination indicator has switched from L1 to LB1, which is an approach waypoint to help you line up with the runway 20 kilometers out from the landing base. The HUD and the ADI yellow needles will direct you towards LB1. On the radar screen, the approach waypoint and extended runway centerline are shown, indicating whether a left or right turn onto the runway centerline will be made. Turn the aircraft to head towards LB1, but please note that the yellow Q on the radar ring still points toward the L1 destination, it does not point to LB1. To head towards LB1, use either the HUD navigation cues, or the yellow vertical needle of the ADI. The destination indicator has changed to LF1. Turn to the left, following the approach circuit, until the extended runway centerline is in front of the aircraft. Arm the thrust reverser by pulling. The master warning alarm has gone off, to warn you that the low fuel alarm has activated because the fuel remaining is less than 24%, and the BRA 24 warning light has illuminated. Lower the landing gear, by moving its handle down, or by pressing G. 3 green lights should illuminate on the left warning panel, indicating gear down. Extending the gear will automatically lower the flaps on the foreplanes. Keep an eye on the FPM and its fin, do not let the airspeed drop too much. Switch the lights to their landing position, full forward. You are almost intersecting the extended center line. Turn the aircraft to the left to intercept and align with the runway. Begin a descent, using as cue the horizontal yellow needle of the ADI. Once within 10 kilometers of the runway, the HUD will automatically enter its landing mode, with the symbology dropping 3 degrees below the horizon, to help the pilot follow the glide slope. At this point, change the master mode to land Ning PO to have a more decluttered HUD. Do it now. We have paused the mission for a bit, to explain the events that will lead to the touchdown. Do not fly below an airspeed corresponding to a 12 degrees angle of attack, and never allow the airspeed to go below 260 km per hour before touchdown. Align the dot of the glide path line with the flight path marker, and with the desired touchdown point. Keep the FPM slightly above the glide line, to ensure a soft touchdown, under 3 meters per second. For a better view of the runway when at higher angles of attack, raise the seat by right-clicking the highlighted switch. At 15 meters above ground, the HUD will change to its descent rate mode. The previous glide slope line now represents the maximum vertical velocity for touchdown. Do not let the FPM fall under the line. Press spacebar to continue. On touchdown, immediately move the throttle back to idle. Lower the nose immediately after touchdown. The thrust reverser will activate when the nose will touches the ground. Once engaged, you can increase throttle for a shorter landing distance, but do not engage afterburner, as it may damage the reverser. If the red light, reverser transonic, illuminates, reduce throttle immediately, to avoid a compressor stall by the engine ingesting its own exhaust gases. Steer with the rudder and apply wheel brakes evenly. Not a normal procedure, but on this mission bring the aircraft to a complete halt, while still on the runway. At that point, we will present you with a landing distance report. Press spacebar to unpause the mission, so that you can proceed with the final approach and landing.
Springfield 1-1. Check landing gear. Wind 157 at 5 meters per second. Runway 14. Springfield 1-1. Taxi to parking area.
Disable the thrust reverser by pushing the handle. The green light above it should go out. After you get the report, increase throttle and exit the runway at the first available exit, to the left. This is taxiway Delta. Proceed forward, towards the ramp. Perform the following steps after leaving the runway. Master mode selector, set to position BER. If the master mode selector is not set to mode BER, the pilot will be reminded to do so by the lit altitude warning light. Taxi and landing lights, set to taxi, at its full back position. This completes the after landing procedure. Press spacebar if you want to practice the shutdown of your aircraft, or press backspace if you prefer to end the mission now. Excellent. You have successfully completed this vegan training mission on landing and shutdown. Press spacebar to exit from the mission.